What's up, everybody? Welcome to, I guess, the beginning of a repeat of a segment that I did a little bit previously, but with a bit more structure. So I went on to Eve University and I looked up exploration, and there's actually a presentation in a class, so to speak, that they give on this. And so I figured I would walk us through the class and then make a few videos on each race's choices and fitting for ships. Which will come up here in the middle in this presentation a little bit as well. But yeah, so we'll just walk through it a little bit, talk about what it is, why we might want to do it, and I apologize in advance for if it sounds like there's a bit of an echo. I've moved my desk into one of the bedrooms, and I'm trying to make it like an office/studio in here, and I haven't gotten any sound tiles or anything yet. So totally different sound. Same equipment, but that's where we're at. So, introduction to exploration. Let's see here. We will just click over, ignore the class rules. And again, this is from wiki.eveuniversity.org. I don't own any of this material. They've got it on their website here under Exploration 101. And so this is a brief sort of overview of what we're looking at here for exploration. So, what is it? Exploration is basically going and finding either anomalies or signatures. Now, as you can see here, there's a picture and it shows cosmic anomalies, cosmic signatures, and we'll talk a little bit more about that once we get into scanning and what those things mean. So they've segmented it out into green and red. So it's essentially scanning down one of these sites, going in and then doing whatever it is that's there. So to scan them down, so to speak, means that you are using probes to try to triangulate the position of this signal that you've found, right? Whether it's an anomaly or a signature or what. And the closer you get to figuring out its location, the higher the percentage of, I guess, your scan completion is. So past 25%, you learn what the site type is. Past 75%, you learn like what the name and what the name is exactly. And then at 100%, you get the location that you can warp to. So yeah, and by site type, I mean it might be, well, we'll get into that. But so cosmic anomalies usually show up with just your general directional scanner. Cosmic signatures, you really have to scan down without having really any idea what they are. So you have to scan down cosmic anomalies as well, but there you will know what they are. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a little bit. But all right, so cosmic anomalies can either be combat sites, ghost sites, or ore sites. And there are also faction warfare locations, but those aren't really kind of what we're here for. So combat sites are usually filled with NPCs or enemies, non-player characters, with difficulty that varies depending on the system security. So if you're in 1.0 security space, they will be a lot easier than if you're in 0.5, and those will be a lot easier than if you're in 0.1, 0.0, which is null space, or wormholes, and wormholes are the hardest. So they can contain decent loot or faction items. It's best to, once you scan down a site and you get its exact name, to look it up online and see what the recommended ship fittings and ships are for that. It'll also give you a little glimpse into what kind of loot you'll find. Ore sites contain rare ores or sometimes ice. And these are cosmic anomalies. Generally, these are ores that are not found in asteroid belts native to that region. So certain ores that would normally only be found in low security space, if you find them in a cosmic anomaly, they may appear in higher security space. So this is a lucrative thing to look for and then harvest from in order to, get higher value ore without putting yourself at as great a risk to get it. Ghost sites contain, and I'm reading some of this off of their website, Eve University website. So ghost sites contain covert research facilities, usually in the form of 4 containers that are difficult to hack, and the first failure causes the can to explode, or the object that you're attempting to hack or analyze, it explodes, and it will damage you. Now, regardless of how well you're doing in hacking these cans, let's just call them that for the sake of conversation, within 2 minutes of you warping into the site, and there is no like visible timer, so you need to be aware of this, a group of NPCs and very tough enemies will show up immediately, and not only will they blow up all the remaining containers, which are what you're next to and you'll take damage from, but they will engage you. So generally speaking, if you find a ghost site and you're able to scan it down, get in there, look for the can that has a name that is different than all of the others. Open that one and then get the hell out. The one with a different name has a higher value of loot inside of it. Generally, that's the rule. And you may, no matter how good you are, you may have time to crack a second can, but it's just not worth it. So get that first can and then warp out and you're good to go. I say this in part because it's important to realize that your combat ability, if you're really good at scanning things, if you're in a ship that is capable of great scanning ability, your combat ability will be very small, with some exceptions, but we can get into that a little bit later. So those are ghost sites, and look for the words covert in the name of the site, or covert research. And then faction warfare locations, generally you can get through, we'll have to get into that some other time. That's like a totally its own topic, essentially. So let's see. So those are cosmic anomalies. And we'll just come over here. Cosmic signatures, on the other hand, have very similar sites, but they also include relic sites and data sites, which you can see there, and wormholes. So cosmic signatures are where the only place that you'll be able to scan down and find wormholes. Combat sites are going to be very similar. Again, they're harder and more rewarding, and always a good idea to look it up online before you just warp on in and get to it. There are gas sites, which is similar to the ore sites that you might have seen as an anomaly, but gas you need to have a very specific skill to harvest from and a ship equipped for it. A lot of times gas harvesting ships, or for the most part, the ship that you will be able to use to scan down gas sites is not going to be able to harvest that gas. So you're going to need to scan it down, save the location, go back and get your gas scanning or your gas harvesting mining ship, and then come back and harvest it. Ghost sites, same thing as before with anomalies. Relic and data sites is where you use your archaeology and your hacking skills. And so this is just a collection of cans that you can go up to, hack or analyze, opens it up, and you can get loots out of it. Now, data sites generally will have research components and the occasional rare blueprint. Analyze or relic sites will have high quality salvage materials in their cans, and so a lot of people feel like that's the most lucrative way to use your time is to only do relic sites. But you can get blueprints in a data site that by themselves will sell for $1 billion ISK if you get it in a wormhole or something like that. But we can get into that in a bit. So these are the signatures that you'll use compared to anomalies. If you're going out for exploration, or what people generally refer to as exploration, they're usually referring to the relic sites and data sites. So let's see. Why would you want to do this? Well, you can be one of 3 different explorers. And one of them is the combat, where you search down and scan down combat sites, and you do those. And that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's what people refer to as ratting or killing pirates. So that's one option, and then you collect loot from those sites. Some of them are multiple stages, and there'll be acceleration gates between each, and you got to clear the one stage before the gate unlocks, and you can go on to the next one. And also, it's worth saying that when you clear one of these, sometimes they can trigger a... Oh man, I'm forgetting the word. But they'll trigger a specific event or site that is only given to you. You're given a bookmark to a location that needs to be cleared within 24 hours. And some of those bookmarks, depending on whether you're in low or null sec, can be extremely lucrative. And as such, if you go to sell on the open market, you can sell the bookmark itself for like 150 million. So that's a Combat Explorer. Miner, they're scanning down ore sites as well as gas sites, and they are harvesting them, as you might imagine, and then generally the more generic hacker, analyzer, explorer, and they are going to relic sites or data sites and gathering loot there. So all factions have a beginning ship that is geared towards exploration, right? And they're listed here. So the Amar have a Magnate, the Galente Imicus, the Minmatar Probe, and the Caldari Heron. These are all sort of first tier, first tech level frigates. And they all are very similar, but with small differences that you might notice. So look for, if you forget the names or you don't have this open in front of you, that's fine. But look at the ship characteristics, because they will tell you if a ship is geared towards exploration. And what the indicators are bonuses to core and combat scanner probe strength. Reduction in salvager duration is often on there as well. And then a roll bonus to relic and data analyzer virus strength. What those mean, we'll get into. I've got another video about hacking and analyzing the practice of it, which sort of gets into what virus strength is and virus coherence. But we'll get into that in another video, and we'll kind of get a little bit more in depth. So these are the ships that you will, at least to begin with, that you will have to choose from. You'll only be able to fly, especially if you're alpha, the races ships that you started the game as. If you're not alpha and you're omega, you can pretty quickly and easily skill into another race's ship. And if you had to do that, or if you're just starting out and watching this without having picked a race yet, I would recommend going with the Caldari, and I'll explain why in just a moment. So let's see. We will go to the next slide. Now, things that you will want on your ship, and I'm gonna do a different video in the coming weeks for each ship, or for each faction, basically. So I'll do a ship fitting video for the Amar, where I look at the Tech 1 frigate for exploration and the Tech 2 and offer some thoughts and fitting ideas for each one. But so you're going to use basic components. Pretty much every exploration ship is going to have a core probe launcher, core scanner probes, and there are alternates to this when you have enough money to sort of get away from the standard Tech 1 variant. But just to begin with, you're going to need a probe launcher, you're going to need probes, and not combat probes. Those are useful for sort of more on the combat level, which is hunting down other players, and canisters and containers that other players have dropped. So this is, if you get into combat scanning, that's a totally different game. It's the same skills, but your uses for it are going to be very different than what we're talking about here. So in addition to those, if you are going to get into archaeology sites or relic sites, you're going to need a relic analyzer. If you're going to do data sites or want to do hacking, you're going to need a data analyzer. It's important to recognize or acknowledge that sometimes, like I said before, people only set out to do one kind of exploration, right? They're only looking for archaeology sites or relic sites. And so they will only equip their ship with a relic analyzer, and they'll leave the data analyzer at home, freeing up that mid slot to be used for something else. It's also worth mentioning that all of these exploration ships are not combat ships, like I mentioned before, and so you need to be very careful about what you're doing and how you do it, because people are always going to be there to pick you off. Your cargo hold is going to generally be filled with high value cargo that doesn't take up much space, so you're a prime target, whether that's because you are doing relic and data sites, whether you're a miner and mining high value ore, or even if you're in like a combat signature. These things are or signature or anomaly. If you're in a combat site, somebody else can very easily show up because they were able to scan down the same thing you were, and they will, if you're in low sec, null sec, or a wormhole, which often you will be because that's the most lucrative area to be. They're going to be able to kill you and take your stuff without any real qualms, and very easily, because your ship will have pretty much, for the most part, no weaponry whatsoever, very little survivability. But again, we'll get into fitting after the fact. So these are the basics for what you want to have on your ship, on any ship. You're going to need an analyzer, whether it's relic or data, depends on the site. If you're planning to do both, then you want to leave them both on your ship at all times. You're going to need a probe launcher, and you're going to need probes. I would recommend 16 probes because you use 8 at a time. And if you make a mistake and accidentally abandon 8, you still have 8 that you can use and not get yourself lost or stuck somewhere. So other bits of equipment that you might want to look at, a micro warp drive. You don't need to get anything fancy. You're mostly just looking to travel as fast as possible because sometimes these cans are 100 kilometers away from each other. And it just, the less time you spend hanging out at a place where somebody can scan you down, the better off you will be. So a micro warp drive helps, and you'll need the skills that are shown here to use it. You will want to look into, there are 2 schools of thought for your low slots. Usually they're either inertial stabilizers or nanofiber internal structures. Those 2 items help you align to your warp vector quicker and enter warp faster. The nanofiber internal structure makes you more agile and move faster overall, but you also sacrifice some of your hull or your armor for it. These are trade-offs that are generally okay because, like I said, you have no real defensibility to begin with, so adding or losing 10 or 15% of a very small number maintains and keeps you at a very small number, so it doesn't really matter. But additionally, you can add scan range finding arrays, which are listed here in the upper right, and those add to your scanning ability, which you're going to be limited to as an alpha character, but a little bit less so as an omega character. The scanning skills take a long time to train to full, so there's a lot of equipment that you can get, or ships, like we saw. Let me get back over here. Like we saw here, the level of frigate skill you have, as an example, contributes to your probe strength or your scanner strength. And if you don't have that, you can use, you can make that better by adding a scan range finding array or other such equipment. So these are things to look into as well, but generally this is the bulk of the equipment you want. These 4 items are sort of must-haves. These 4 items are good to haves, and you can sort of pick and choose which ones make most sense. So what skills do you need to get started? As an alpha, you can see in the image here that it shows, it looks like I've got Bailey coming to say hi. As an alpha, it shows you what skills you might need to start out, and these are all your scanning skills or exploration skills. They help your scan strength, your deviation and scan time, your ability to, your ability to scan things down, and then once you're hacking or analyzing a container, whether your coherence or your strength is higher or lower. So your coherence is your health, effectively, as you're going through these little mini games, and your strength is your ability to attack the server core or any of the defenses like firewalls that crop up between you and whatever. So you want to increase these as high as you can. And when you see that roll bonus down in the right corner there, that's what it's referring to. Relic and data analyzer virus strength. So by just being in that ship, you're giving yourself 5 more virus strength. There are skills and components that raise your coherence or raise your skill your strength, and those are worth looking into as well. Some of them being rigging and other such. So this is a basic overview. We're not going to get too much into it, but those are the exploration or scanning skills that you see there. Archaeology and hacking are what you might imagine the relic and data site hacking or scanning or analyzing skills. They are very specific, so your skill in archaeology will not help you with data sites, and your hacking skills won't help you with relic sites. So just to give you an idea of what one of these ships will run you with a basic fitting, don't worry about the fitting too much here. There is some variation between the two, but just note that in general, you're looking at about 800 to 900,000 ISK to outfit one of the starting frigates. So the ones they've listed here range from like 641 to 875. It's good to know this effectively, and these are just really rough estimates based on the market at the time that this presentation was made. So if yours comes out to like 1.5 million, that's just kind of the way it is. But we won't dwell too much on this, but realize that you're going to be losing your ship and all of your components with some regularity. The nice thing is that they're cheap. So you can lose 20 of these, and that'll all be paid for by your first exploration run, most likely. All you need to do is find a few sites, even in high security space, to make 20 million ISK, and that'll replace all of the ships that you're losing. So one school of thought is to literally just use sort of set out a cheap fit that you can easily replace, and then just don't worry if you die. Go back and get another ship and head on off and keep doing what you're doing. So this is kind of what you're looking at investment wise. And yeah, basic skills you probably have learned already. We don't need to go over those too much, but we'll get into bookmarking. I have a presentation, or I do have a presentation actually, but I've got a video on creating safe spots, and that's important, and you should probably watch that to understand how to do it. We can talk about why and when you want to create a safe spot, or why and when you might want to bookmark things in one of the sort of the future videos on exploration here. And I will also create a video a bit more in depth about how to make your way through hacking or analyzing. Now, just to draw some attention to some things, the system core is kind of what you're looking for. These defensive subsystems, the restoration node, the firewall, the antivirus, and the virus suppressor, these are all sort of negative things that if you open it up, it blocks you getting to all of the surrounding nodes, and you need to move through it or attack it, so to speak, in order to pass through. As a priority, you notice that this restoration node has 80 health and 10 attack strength. You want to clear any restoration node that is available, with some exceptions, first, because for every turn you make as you move around, it adds coherence, or it adds health to all of the other defensive subsystems, and that can very quickly ruin your hacking session right there. So anyway, so we'll get into this and exactly what this means. There are positive things that you can get, like a secondary vector, a polymorphic shield, or a kernel rot, or a utility subsystem that help you in certain ways, whether it's repairing damage that you've taken to your coherence, and you can repair that well beyond what you started at. Things that obliterate one of these defensive subsystems, one of them damages them a certain amount, and so on and so forth. So there's some complexity to the minigame, but the more you do it, the more you'll understand, and the more you'll sort of start to learn about it. And you can watch me do it as well, because we're going to be doing a bunch of videos on exploration, and we can go from there. One sort of the most time-consuming portion of it is the scanning. You got to scan down and find a location to do something at, and then from there, once you're there, it's sort of a high-intensity, anxiety-inducing hacking race. So all right. So we'll get into that in a future video as well, and I think we are nearing the end here. Let's see. Yeah, all right. So we can talk about each of these if you want to get into it here. The system core comes in 3 different colors. One is green, one is yellow, with the green one we saw previously. Right here, you'll notice that it's 50 and 10. It's got 50 health and 10 strength. This one has 70 health and 10 strength, and this one has 90 health and 10 strength. And that's usually an indicator of how hard the overall can is. Harder is obviously the red, medium strength is the yellow, and easiest is the green. So like we were talking about, there are 4 good things that you can run into. There are a variety of, defensive things that you can run into. So kernel rot, which is the first one, it reduces the target subsystem's coherence by 50%. So some of these with really high coherence, like in 100, that would just take 50 right off the top. And then that gives you something that you can use. You can just attack it with your 30, and take it down in 2 more turns. It's also worth noting that when you attack one of these nodes, regardless of what it is, you do your damage first, and then it does its. So if you kill it on an attack, it will not do the resulting, its own damage to you as a follow-up right before it dies. It'll just die. So that'll save your bacon with some frequency. Secondary vector, which is here on the left, reduces a target's coherence by 20 with each hit. And so it has 3 charges where the first one is released on use. And if I select secondary vector and I put it on, a virus suppressor over here on the right, you can see it's got 60 health. The moment I use it, it takes 20 off. And then as I move around elsewhere, each move I make counts as a, quote, action, and it'll lower it another 20. And then another 20. And since it's got 3 in each item that you get, that one of those secondary vectors would clear a virus suppressor. So it's important to sort of have a loose understanding of what you get so that you know when and how best to use it. The polymorphic shield prevents the next 2 instances of damage done to your virus, or to you, essentially. So things with really high strength, like this antivirus or whatever, that would do 40 damage to me, I can attack it twice after using this polymorphic shield on it, and I wouldn't take any damage for my first 2 attacks. Self-repair acts very similarly to the secondary vector, which is, if I click on it, each move I gain health back. How much it puts back is it varies. It has 3 charges, and let's see. Generally, it's a good practice to use this as soon as you pick it up, because there's no limit to how much coherence you can get, and you just click it and then continue moving, and that way it adds over the next 3 turns, and it clears it makes a vacancy on the slot for, you have a limit basically of how many of these positive things you can carry at any one time. Depending on the ship, you may only have 1 slot, and so you want to clear that slot to be able to pick up another one as soon as possible. Let's see. So that was self-repair. The restoration node heals all the other nodes, including the... it really only shows up in more difficult hacks, and each turn they're active, and that's just you moving around elsewhere. They'll give extra coherence to one random uncovered defensive subsystem. In my experience, that may be every one of the other subsystems, but I could be wrong. Antivirus subsystems, which are these... it says they have low coherence but high strength. Firewalls have high coherence but low strength. And you can see, just 20 strength, and this one has very high strength of 40. The virus suppressor subsystem halves my virus strength while active. So, if I have a virus strength of 30, like it shows here, when I attack this, I'm only going to be doing 15 damage each. But I'll be taking 15. So I'll need to attack it 4 times in order to clear this, and I'll take 45 damage in the process. Not 60, because that last hit will kill it, and I won't have to take damage coming back. So, yeah, that's kind of how all this works. And again, these system cores, you have to attack them like they're a defensive subsystem. So you can clear an entire map or minigame, but if you don't leave yourself enough strength to get through however many times you have to attack it, you can fail just by getting killed on the system core. That's a real bummer. So that's something you want to avoid. So there's a lot of information here. like I said previously, the more you do this, the easier it'll be. You can keep this up, and you can look at the. Oh, my watch is talking to me. Yeah, no, we're done here. You can keep this up, and you can look online for explanations of what you just picked up. I would again recommend wiki.eveuniversity.org/exploration_101, as it explains it all in text. But in general, just keep in mind, attack the restoration nodes first, clear out your self-repair first, secondary vector works slowly over time, and then the other two I just use to kind of attack things. So until you remember what each of these does, that's I guess a good way to go about just kind of clearing it out. So probing will have to be its own video because it's a bit of a it's a bit involved. So things to take note of. There's some information up at the top you should look at, information at the bottom that you'll be messing with. This name here, cosmic signature, this is what it looks like when you find one of those cosmic signatures. It doesn't tell you if it's a gas site or an ore site or a ghost or anything like that, like we talked about. It just tells you cosmic signature. And then the signal strength right here on the right is where if it gets above 25%, you'll figure out whether it's a relic site or like an archaeology or a data site or combat or whatever. And then once you get to 75%, it'll give you an exact name. Now, from 0 to 25%, you're just going to have this red, I think this is how it works. This is my experience. You're just going to have like a sphere on the map where somewhere in there is where this signature is. And when you hit 25%, the sphere becomes a dot or maybe 2 dots depending on the item. And then you can kind of get closer and closer as you scan down on it and get it until it is a green dot, in which case you can get it to 100% and you'll have something. This will turn into like warp 2 arrows as opposed to a percentage. And then you can just right click on the item and save the location, and you can then warp there later. So in general, if you're flying disposable ships, it's probably not terrible to die. But in general, in EVE, you always want to be safe first, right? So set yourself up to succeed. Be looking at the directional scanner all the time. While you're hacking, do it, because a lot of times people will pop out of cloak right when they see you engage with a can because they know that you're otherwise distracted. And around gates or wormholes, these are all places where people, any place where people will gather is someplace that you need to be very careful. And any site that you can scan down, somebody else can scan down and find you at. So, like it says here, expect to lose your ship. It will happen. You'll lose your ship with 100 million ISK of random crap in it. It'll be a real bummer, but get back into another one and go back to work. If you're nice to other people, they will they will sometimes be nice to you in return. And always name your ship. Don't leave it as a, scattered marbles imicus. Like, don't do that, because they know you. Anybody who sees you on directional scanner knows you're an explorer, knows the ship that you're in has no guns and no defensive capability, and will come at you. Okay, so don't give them or anybody any more information than you absolutely have to. And so this is kind of it. No, there isn't a whole lot more. Thank you to EVE University for this great information and this great resource. If you have any questions for me, hit me up in the comments. We're going to be doing kind of a deep dive into exploration over the next bunch of videos. Thanks to request. In part, there were two people responded so far with suggestions on what we can get into. One of them was Victor Correa. Thank you. I need to get into mining safe spots, and we can just close that down. And the other one was DG Rage Riot. Thank you for your input, and we're doing these because the request was made for exploration information and sort of deep dives. So that's what we're doing. So if you have any requests or anything that you'd like to learn about, hit me up in the comments. Check out the podcast that I host once a week. It's usually Monday or Tuesday night, where we record it live on Twitch at Errant Gamer Twitch. And then it goes live on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you get your podcasts a day or two after. So usually by Tuesday or Wednesday, it's up. And yeah. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, hit me up. Otherwise, look for some future videos on exploration fitting, scanning, hacking, all of that. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.